It is one of Bismarck's most recognized landmarks and has towered the city for well over 100 years. It was considered one of the most prestigious hotels in the upper Midwest, influential as a major political center and host to illicit activities. It was once North Dakota's tallest building, with construction continuing for decades. As we are going to learn, only a luck of fate saved it from becoming a victim of urban renewal in the 1970s. The historic Patterson Hotel with your host Randy Hoffman on History Talk, where we step back through local history to explore the people, places, and events that shaped our community. History Talk streams exclusively on KFYR+. Edward Patterson developed the hotel in 1910, and it opened on New Year's Day 1911. Edward Patterson also owned the Sioux Hotel, located immediately to the north, and the Northwest Hotel, formerly the Sheridan House. The Sioux Hotel was later directly connected to the Patterson and became known as the Patterson Annex. Amusingly, Patterson called the Sioux Hotel the Princess Hotel briefly, to poke fun at his chief rival's Prince Hotel. Constructed in 8 months at a cost of $150,000, the hotel represented the most modern construction techniques of the era. It was the first building built in North Dakota to be built with steel-reinforced concrete. It was often advertised as absolutely fireproof and shockproof, in reference to Bismarck's devastating 1898 fire and San Francisco's 1906 earthquake. The Patterson was originally called the Mackenzie Hotel, named for Alexander Mackenzie, one of Bismarck's most influential pioneers. The hotel's name was officially changed to the Patterson Hotel in March 1927. However, there are numerous references to it being called the Patterson even earlier. Today, the original Mackenzie nameplates are on display. In naming the hotel after Mackenzie, Patterson said in the Bismarck Tribune on October 21, 1910, "If it had not been for Alex Mackenzie, there would have been no Bismarck worthwhile. His work made it possible that there be demand for such a hotel, and I made up my mind that, as long as I was putting up a building that would be sure to endure for many years, I would make it, in some measure, a tribute to and appreciation of the man who did so much for Bismarck." Upon opening, the 7-story, 150-room hotel was the tallest building in North Dakota, preempting Patterson's own Sioux Hotel, and it remained the tallest until the current Capitol's completion in 1934. It was the largest hotel located in all of North Dakota, South Dakota, Idaho, and Montana. It contained the most private baths, 84 of them, of any building in the state, and it had the city's first electric elevator. The Patterson underwent continued expansion until the 1930s, ultimately enlarging from its original 7 stories to a towering 10 stories. This was done, at least partially, to exploit a loophole where property taxes couldn't be collected on a building undergoing construction. Patterson settled a tax case filed against him relating to his abuse of this loophole on January 2, 1936, for a little more than $58,000. Note that the 10th floor was only partially enclosed until 1983. Patterson did not initially intend for the Mackenzie to span 7 stories. It wasn't until Patterson realized acquiring an additional 25 feet of frontage along Main Avenue was impractical that he opted to build vertically. Even at that, the original objective was only a 5-story structure, with the foundation designed to support additional stories to be later added. Its scale was enlarged to encompass 7 stories while excavating the foundation. The foundation reportedly could withstand up to 20 stories. A rooftop garden was added in 1920, the first such amenity west of Chicago, and enlarged the following year to include a bigger dance floor and an enclosed dining room. Construction on the 8th and 9th floors were announced in 1929 and completed in 1931. The 10th floor was completed by 1932. Which also added the Sky Room and Tip-Top Lounge. The Patterson Hotel was a major gathering place for politicians and businessmen alike. This especially held true after 1921, when it became home to the Nonpartisan League, after the league's former headquarters at the Northwest Hotel, which Patterson also owned, was destroyed by fire. The Patterson also housed state government offices after the state capitol was destroyed by fire in December 1930, until a replacement capitol was completed 4 years later.
The second floor of the Patterson is famous for its political goings-on. The Nonpartisan League held many a meeting in Convention Hall. Legislators stayed at the Patterson during sessions because it was convenient, due south of the state capitol. And when the capitol burned in 1930, the Legislative Assembly met at the Patterson.
Through the years, it hosted 4 U.S. presidents: Teddy Roosevelt, Calvin Coolidge, John F. Kennedy, and Lyndon B. Johnson. The Patterson was known to host illicit activities. It served alcohol during Prohibition, where an electronic alarm system kept out unwanted guests, assumingly to protect against federal raids. Prostitution and gambling were also alleged to occur.
Besides drugs, you could always get a drink at the Patterson, even during Prohibition. And if you had money to burn, there was always gambling or prostitution. This area was once a suite of rooms that Christensen says was usually busy with less than honorable activities.
Rumors exist that an underground tunnel once connected the hotel with the train depot across the street to secretly smuggle contraband and guests. This is unconfirmed officially, with no definitive evidence proving the tunnel actually existed, despite many who have claimed to have seen it. Peacock Alley was first established in 1933. It is Bismarck's oldest surviving restaurant. This is non-consecutive, however. Peacock Alley closed briefly in the 1950s and again in the early 80s when the building was condemned. It was one of the first, if not the first, legal liquor establishments established post-Prohibition. North Dakota was admitted as a dry state, and therefore liquor was prohibited from 1889 until 1933. As we already mentioned, this didn't discourage the Patterson Hotel from selling liquor. Ed Patterson retired from daily operations on January 1st, 1930, when he leased the hotel and the adjacent Sioux Hotel to C.E. Danielson of Minot. Danielson had operated Minot's Grand Hotel since 1917. The Pattersons maintained ownership of the buildings themselves and continued residing in a suite of the hotel. Edward Patterson died in 1945. His wife, Rose Judge Patterson, continued operating the hotel until her own passing in January 1975. Ownership of the hotel then passed to the Patterson estate. By the 1970s, the Patterson Hotel's glory days were well behind it. Completion of Interstate 94, competition from modern hotels, and a decaying downtown led to its ultimate closure in 1978. In 1976, the building was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. This likely saved it from imminent demolition. The first attempt at renovation came in 1977, when the building was sold to 10 local investors who intended to invest $1.5 million in renovations to restore it to a 1920s-themed first-class hotel, complete with a convention center and fine dining establishment. The planned project was also to include dual glass elevators on the building's northwest exterior, a retail mall area, atrium, and ballet portico. Unfortunately, those plans never materialized. On May 2, 1978, the Patterson officially ceased operating as a hotel. At that time, most of the building was being used as residential apartments and office space, which were allowed to remain in the building for the time being. By October, building residents, roughly 60 of them, were encouraged to obtain new housing.
This morning, residents of the Patterson were handed eviction notices. They were told that they have 30 days to vacate the building. The notices also say that the owners, Midstate Investment, had no viable alternative to closing down the historic old hotel.
Around this time, rumors surfaced that Burleigh County Housing Authority was looking to purchase the historic hotel for preservation and to provide affordable housing, but these rumors were quickly put to rest.
We were looking at a purchase by Burleigh County Housing Authority for historic renovation of the tower structure and for elderly housing.
Privately, officials who have contact with housing assistance money doubt that there is any available for this kind of project in Bismarck. And in fact, there may be some discrepancy over whether the housing authority is actually interested in acquiring the property.
Dean, some confusion over whether or not the housing authority has tendered an offer for the Patterson. What is the situation?
I think we can put that to rest really quick. There has been no offer by the housing authority to acquire the Patterson Hotel. The housing authority doesn't have the resources and has no intention of of acquiring the Patterson Hotel.
Condemnation papers were first filed in August of that year. Utility operator MDU was threatening to discontinue services due to outstanding bills. Once again, the building's future remained in doubt. In 1980, a new group of investors seeking to renovate the building obtained approval for Municipal Industrial Development Act bonds, or MIDA bonds. This was the first positive step towards saving the building. Financing remained a hurdle, however. Renovation was expected to cost up to $6 million, not including $300,000 for the building itself. The City of Bismarck also agreed to provide TIF funding for the building's renovation. That funding was later jeopardized, however, when concerns surfaced that the funds were inappropriately approved. You see, at the time, TIF funding could not be used on privately owned buildings. In August 1980, an official order for condemnation was filed after an inspection highlighted concerns with the electrical, plumbing, and its heating systems. Structural issues were also discovered. The building was ordered evacuated the following month. In February 1981, the City Commission delayed the condemnation hearing after new investors surfaced. The following month, the Commission approved a 120-day delay for the condemnation order, while the building's investors secured final mortgage insurance and approval. At least one City Commissioner suggested that no other delays be granted. Remember that the condemnation process started years before. Renovation efforts took another step forward in April after HUD committed to rent subsidies in exchange for the property to be used as affordable senior housing.
To quote from the letter that we received this morning, "You are hereby notified that your preliminary proposal, dated January 19th, to provide 117 units of newly constructed assisted housing in Bismarck has been selected for funding."
This commitment by HUD was considered the last hurdle to get mortgage insurance approval. In a stroke of luck, Ginnie Mae approved a $5.5 million federal loan for the project at 7.5% interest amortized over 40 years. The Patterson project was chosen in a computerized lottery. The additional funding required for the restoration of the non-residential portions of the building were funded privately and through TIF. After years of setbacks and delays, renovation was finally completed in 1983. The former hotel reopened as Patterson Place, housing 117 affordable senior housing units. The first tenants occupied the building in April, with a formal dedication in October.
Again, let me say the fact that there's so much history wrapped up in this building, in addition to the architecture and the fact that it represents the early development of North Dakota, the coming of the railroad and all that goes with it, the Langer era, the Alexander Mackenzie era, and all of those things is almost without question the most important reasons why this place should be restored.
Peacock Alley reopened in the hotel's former lobby in 1984. A Minnesota-based company acquired the Patterson in 2019 and completed a $22 million renovation in 2021 that restored the brick to its original appearance and added a rooftop sign resembling one that once stood there. It also remodeled the residential apartments, replaced the roof, and added new common areas, among other improvements. The project was partially financed through low-income housing tax credits and the National Housing Trust Fund. If you want to read more about the Patterson and other Bismarck-Mandan history, I invite you to check out my 2 Bismarck history books. They are available to purchase on Amazon and select local bookstores. Copies are also available at the Bismarck Public Library. Visit bismarckbook.com for more information. That was our look at the historic Patterson Hotel building. This has been History Talk with Randy Hoffman. History Talk streams exclusively on KFYR+. Segments are available to watch on demand at kfyrtv.com or KFYR TV's YouTube channel or through the KFYR TV streaming app.